if you haven't heard, Sea of Thieves may be coming to the Nintendo Switch as well as the PlayStation, and this is actually a brilliant move by Microsoft. Now, let's get into it. Now, let me just start by saying I am Remo Yes Man, and today I would like to talk about Sea of Thieves, because if you haven't heard, Sea of Thieves is reportedly going to be ported to the Nintendo Switch as well as the PlayStation 5, and this is an absolute good thing for the industry. This is absolute progress, but unfortunately, whenever we get progress in the gaming industry, the console fanboys always have to turn a net positive into a net negative. But ultimately, this is a really good thing for Microsoft and gamers in general, because a lot of gamers on other platforms would like to play Sea of Thieves, and a lot of gamers don't give a fuck about the console war. Then on top of that, this is a step forward in the gaming industry. So let's dive into it. So if you don't remember, not too long ago at the Xbox Direct, Phil Spencer came out on stage and he admitted they lost the console war. He said that about 90% of gamers are already committed to their existing console, according to Spencer. And it's just not true that if you go off and build great games, that all of a sudden you're going to see a massive console share shift in a dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One. And he is absolutely right about that, guys. I don't know if you guys remember, but during the Xbox One era, they were pushing this always online DRM bullshit. And it's funny when you think about it now, because even with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series Edition in their current state, they kind of do have an always online DRM depending on what services you're using on these consoles. Like, if you have any of the subscription services available on these console and you download any games on the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series Edition from the subscription service, and you play those games offline, eventually you're gonna need to check in and make sure that license is still active, and that shit's gonna happen a couple times a day because of the fucking DRM. So it's funny when you think about it. In a way, the consoles nowadays, they kind of do have an always online DRM depending on how you're using them. But moving on, right? During the Xbox One era, they're pushing this DRM bullshit, and they're pushing a lot of TV bullshit because they had a lot of TV apps built into their gaming console. It was just all about TV. Then on top of all that, they had a feature that wouldn't let you play used games because it would be a licensing issue. And it's funny when you think about it now, because even now, today, with the all digital future that Sony and Microsoft are pushing, they're kind of getting their way with the whole used game situation. Hell, the next Xbox console may not even have a disc drive to begin with. So they're 100% getting their way with their all digital future. But anyway, Microsoft was rolling out all these anti-consumer features during the Xbox One era before the console had even launched, and everybody hated these features. And you had a bunch of influencers in the community trying to tell them that this was going to be an absolute disaster. And you had so many voices just from the general public trying to tell them that this would destroy the entire platform. And did Xbox listen? Fuck no, they didn't. So basically what ended up happening was, at the E3 presentation that year, Xbox got laughed out of the room, and it was at that point that Sony cut a promo, where the promo was an instructional video with two guys showing you how to share games on the PlayStation 4, and it was simply one guy handing his game to the other guy, and he said, "This is how you share games on the PlayStation 4," and boom, that was it. And furthermore, at Sony's E3 presentation that year, all Sony did was Sony walked out onto the stage and they said, not only do PlayStation disc-based games not need to be connected online to play, but we don't impose any restrictions on playing any used games. And that was it. And the crowd went fucking wild. And that was basically the death of the Xbox console, as Xbox has already admitted they've lost the console war. Because the truth is, guys, during the last console generation, the PlayStation 4 sold almost 120 million units, while the Xbox One sold roughly 60 million units. Then, on top of that, when you look at the PlayStation 5 has pushed about 22 million units or just over that, while the Xbox Series edition has sold roughly 7 million units or just over that. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is Microsoft is so far behind Sony in the console war. Microsoft cannot even eat Sony's dust because the dust has settled. But that's the console war, not the gaming space. When it comes to the gaming space, Microsoft is down, but they're not out. When it comes to the gaming space, the problem with Microsoft is they're so far behind in console sales, and on top of that, they have this whole Game Pass strategy. Now, Game Pass is actually really, really good, but the problem with Game Pass is you don't have enough gamers on your platform to begin with, so you've pretty much reached a cap on your Game Pass sales. Then on top of that, how many people subscribe to Game Pass that would have actually bought a copy of your game, but now they're not buying a copy of your game because they're paying one set cost a month for access to this entire gaming library. So Game Pass is actually a double-edged sword for Microsoft. It keeps them relevant and it helps them compete, but at the same time, there's still a cap on how many players they're actually reaching. So, what Microsoft is thinking about doing is putting their games on the opposition's platform, which is guerrilla tactics in this constant war of the gaming ecospace. And it's actually very fucking brilliant to put your game on the opposition's platform, because it's not like they're putting games on the opposition's platform day one, but even if they were, who gives a fuck? If you can get minimum a few 100,000 to a few million players to buy your game on the opposition's platform, that's actually very fucking well played. Like I just said, Sony has moved over 22 million PlayStation 5s and almost 120 million PlayStation 4. If you start putting games on the PlayStation platform, first of all, Sony can't say no. They can't fucking refuse you. Then on top of that, you open the game up to like the second largest player base in the world. Furthermore, the Nintendo Switch boasts the largest community of gamers on a console platform behind the PlayStation. And I know there's a lot of overlap between the two consoles, but there's a lot of people that only play on the Nintendo platform. And I've literally seen on a fuck ton of Nintendo forums already that there's a fuck ton of people that would love to play Sea of Thieves on the Nintendo platform. So if you can get minimum 100,000 to several million people on Sony's platform to give you an extra 40 to 60 bucks, and then an extra 40 to 60 bucks on Nintendo's platform, to be honest, on Nintendo's platform, shit, they might charge you $70. You know how they get down on Nintendo's platform. Those motherfuckers be overcharging you like it's nobody's business. They'll charge you a premium for games that came out fucking years ago. But yeah, if you can get minimum 100,000 to millions of sales on Nintendo and Sony's platform, that'll open the game up to a whole bunch of new people that never got to experience it in the first place. Then on top of that, cross-play will bring all these players across all these platforms together. Furthermore, by doing this, it will expand Microsoft's reach in the gaming industry. So this is actually really important, guys, because if this is successful, we're damn sure going to see more and more games come out on other platforms from the Microsoft umbrella. So I don't see why these console fan bitches are talking shit about Microsoft that now owns Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, the Crash Bandicoot franchise, the Diablo franchise, the Overwatch franchise, and a bunch of other shit that I'm not going to name right now. The point is, there's going to be a slew of new games coming out under the Microsoft banner, and they're testing out the waters with Sea of Thieves in Hi-Fi Rush because eventually they want to put a lot of other games on other platforms, and this is going to be a net positive for everybody involved. Imagine at Gamescom one day, Microsoft comes out and they show off the console version of World of Warcraft. That would be a huge turning point for the console industry. And I know there's a lot of World of Warcraft purists out there that will say you'll never be able to play WoW on console. It just will never work on a controller. While there's other WoW players out there that will laugh at those players and they'll say, ha, I've been playing WoW on a controller for years, so joke's on you. So best believe at some point there's going to be World of Warcraft on console, as well as Warcraft 3, Warcraft Reforged, and all that good shit. So this is actually a net positive for gamers, and it's a net positive for Microsoft. But you know what? It's actually also a net positive for any of the studios involved working under Microsoft, because it kind of allows them to weed out who's really putting out quality work and who's putting out bullshit. Because by allowing these studios to put their games on other platforms, the quality of the work will reflect in the sales that come from those platforms. So if you're truly making a good game and you're making quality work, here, put it on the other platforms. That way, if you're really doing a good job, you can make some fucking money, you know? Furthermore, even if you guys do hate Microsoft and Xbox for some weird reason, which I don't see why you would, because Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, none of them give a fuck about you. They're all just companies trying to pad their bottom line at the end of the day. So if you hate one of them, you might as well hate them all or be totally indifferent towards all of them to begin with. But even if you hate Microsoft for some weird reason, let me just say, you still want to play Sea of Thieves, because Sea of Thieves is truly a really fucking good game. It's really fun to hop on Sea of Thieves and match up with 4 other players, hop on a galleon and grab your pet and sail the high seas and go on an adventure with your crew. There's so much content in Sea of Thieves, and if you don't like sailing the high seas and engaging in ship combat with other players, you can absolutely grab a sloop, which is a 1 to 2 man ship, grab your pet, go out and do your own thing and go on your own adventure. I'm the type of player that likes to grab a sloop and grab my pet and go on my own adventure every now and then. But I still get paranoid from time to time, because you never know if you're going to get attacked by ghost pirates, or you never know if you're going to get attacked by a kraken, or if some other crazy shit is going to happen. There's so much crazy dynamic shit that happens in Sea of Thieves, and it's those times where I wish I did have my squad. In fact, I remember this one time not long ago. I was by myself on my sloop with, it was me and my cat Callisto, and we were raiding this volcano island, and I had a bunch of loot on board my ship. And as I'm raiding this island, right, the fucking volcano erupts, and I had a feeling the volcano was going to erupt because I felt an earthquake, right? I felt like the earth rumbling, but I was still looting the island, so I was like, I'm not gonna just fucking leave, you know? But then the fucking volcano actually started erupting, right? And so I delted my ass back to my ship, and I'm over here trying to raise anchor. All the while my ship's on fire because there's molten rock raining down on me, and I'm over here trying to sail out of this place while I'm running down to the hole and plugging up holes in my ship and filtering out water with my bucket because my ship is sinking. And I'm panicking because I'm by myself and I got a bunch of treasure on board. And it was just this crazy ass dynamic event that you're only gonna get in Sea of Thieves, you know? And then on top of that, one of my favorite things to do when playing Sea of Thieves is just to grab a ship and go to a secluded island and just sit down on the deck of my ship with my cat and watch the sunset. I also like to grab my cat or my monkey and just sit on the deck of my ship and watch the sunrise from any location, because that's always beautiful in Sea of Thieves. The point I'm trying to make is there's a bunch of content in Sea of Thieves and a bunch of untapped potential. So I hope Microsoft does port it to other platforms, because porting Sea of Thieves to another platform is not only a good idea, but it would make them a fuck ton of money by doing so. And to be honest, it's a step forward in the industry, because this whole exclusivity bullshit needs to die. And listen, once upon a time, exclusivity was a viable strategy, but nowadays, you're basically walking a very slippery slope with these exclusive titles, because these titles cost way too much money to develop nowadays. It came out that Spider-Man 2 cost $300 million to develop. 300 fucking million dollars. I'm not sure Spider-Man 2 made $300 million. Then on top of that, even if it did make $300 million, how much of a profit did it actually make? Because it's one thing to spend $300 million and break even, but it's another thing to actually make a profit. And I was absolutely dumbfounded when I found out Spider-Man 2 cost $300 million to make. That's 300 million with the M, son. 300 million. Like, if Spider-Man 2 did not make a profit, the only hope of Spider-Man 2 actually making a profit is when the game gets ported to PC, because PC players are happy to play your game. They just don't want to use your shitty ass platform. But yeah, guys, I know this may sound kind of extreme, but exclusivity needs to die. Exclusivity needs to stop being a thing. In fact, Pal World is taking all Nintendo's success right now, because Nintendo's dumbasses keep doing this exclusivity garbage when Nintendo could have the #1 MMO in the world if they wanted to, with the launch of Pokemon Online on all platforms featuring crossplay. And you can still have aspects of the game that are exclusive to the Nintendo version of the game, you know? Nintendo would be raking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and they would have so much market share that it just wouldn't even be fair anymore, because Nintendo would literally be the new Grand Theft Auto with Pokemon Online. But for some reason, they won't fucking do it, right? So don't worry about it. If you won't do it, somebody else will. And when they end up reaping the rewards and being massively successful, you're going to be sitting there looking stupid because your ass is tardy to the party. Pal World is literal proof of that. But yeah, it's time for Microsoft to be first for a change and do something dramatic by using guerrilla tactics and putting their games on other platforms. And this is an idea that may end up being massively successful and may end up making Microsoft a fuck ton of money and getting them a whole lot more market share in the gaming industry. Anyway, guys, that's going to be all from me. Likes, comments, subscribes are all appreciated. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate you. The best thing you can do for me at this point is just to have a beautiful day. Peace.